Hello, my name is Dr. John Mason, and this is my first of the two-part interview for the Masters of the Journey. I want to tell you a little bit about my evolution and how my spiritual development began. Before I start that, let me just preface this by saying I think that I have been very blessed. I have been given guidance, I've been protected, I've been supported, and I've been led to this very day by wonderful, beautiful forces. It all started for me when I was 19 years old. I was a student at UCLA. I was in a kind of a politically active group, and we decided to go away for a weekend retreat. We got there on a Friday night, and of course, being college students, we sort of partied and wasted our time and had a very good time. But on Saturday, the next day, we decided to organize into discussion groups. Now, what you need to know about me is that I'm 19 years old. I'm pretty naive. I have no experience in the world of spirituality or consciousness development, but I am at UCLA. I'm trying to evolve from being a kid into being an adult. One of the groups that attracted my attention was going to be led by a gentleman, one of our student members, who had just recently read Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying. He thought that it would be interesting to have a discussion group around what the death experience was and how it might be relevant to us in our lives. For some reason, I was drawn to that, maybe guided to that, and I don't even know why. We went off into a room. There must have been about 20 or 25 other students, and he described a little bit about what Kubler-Ross said about death and dying. What he decided to do was to do a guided exercise, and he invited everybody to participate. And what he said was he was going to do a guided relaxation and then have us go experience what the death and dying experience is all about. Again, I'm saying I was very naive, I was very trusting. He began to do the guided relaxation, which got me comfortable, and then he basically said, in a very simple, straightforward way, he says, I want you to step out of your body, imagine that you're hovering above your body, and that you can gradually begin to move away from your body, which I just followed the instructions, didn't think anything of it, and I did. At some point, I was hovering over my body and looking down on myself. That got a little boring, so I turned around 180 degrees and kept moving up and away. I really didn't know where this was going to lead, but I was very comfortable with the process. As I'm moving farther and farther up into space or out into the universe or wherever it was that I was going, I perceived myself getting to halfway to what death and dying was. I don't know why I felt like that, but before me was a dark horizon. On the other side of the horizon, I made the assumption or had the knowledge or the feeling or the wisdom or whatever to think that that was what death and dying was. Now, I have to describe it to you. It was dark, but that big horizon had something very warm and inviting on the other side. I experienced it as pure consciousness, as unconditional love, as something where there was no fear, that was just total acceptance. And from this position, as I saw myself at 19 years of age, I was halfway there, and I thought to myself, you have a choice. You can go to death and dying, or you can go and get back into your body. I paused for a moment because the experience of death and dying was so inviting. It was so warm. It felt encouraging and supporting. But I kind of wanted to go there, but I said to myself very clearly, or something said to me very clearly, but you're not done. There are things that you must do. There are other experiences that you have to have. So it was time for me to go and get back into my body. I kind of regretted leaving, but I did. I went back, got back in my body, and at the end of this guided exercise, the guy in the front of the room said, well, did anybody experience anything? Being 19 and one of the younger people there, I looked around the room, didn't want to go first, but nobody raised their hand. I thought that was kind of odd, but I didn't think anything of it. And again, I'm very calm, I'm very peaceful, I'm very relaxed. I raised my hand, and he said, well, what did you do? I said, well, I followed your instructions. I got out of my body. I went halfway to what I thought of as death and dying. I found out that it was very peaceful. It was very supporting. It was loving. It was a place of higher consciousness, maybe unconditional love. It was a place that did not evoke any fear or anxiety. In fact, it was so inviting, I would say, well, it was a good experience, and we should look forward to that. I wasn't excited about this at all, but the guy in the front of the room started jumping up and down. He got very excited, and he described some of the other things that had happened for people who had reported near-death experiences. It began to sound very familiar and sound like somewhat what I had experienced. It felt that way to me. And at that moment in time, it dawned on me that something very special had occurred. At that moment in time, which was over 45 years ago at this point, I remember it just like it happened. It changed my life. From then, I had no fear of death or dying. I didn't necessarily consider risks that I were taking in life were something to be feared because of a fear of death. And I know other people live their lives differently, but it really changed my life in a very positive way. I'm not sure that I could get out of my body right now, or that I'd be as naive, or it would be as easy to re-experience. But I felt that special feeling, that feeling of acceptance and unconditional love, and perhaps some small measure of connection and oneness. And that is something that I treasure in my life and has affected the way I live and the work that I'm doing. We'll talk about part 2 in just a few minutes. I have another story to tell about my own spiritual growth and development. My name is Dr. John Mason. This was part of my interview for the Masters of the Journey, and thank you for paying attention.